Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm sure we'll have a few people trickling in here, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We're aiming for about 30-40 minutes today with the Q&A period after. So there's a little speech bubble icon with a question mark in it. Click on that and you can enter questions as they come up. So if you have questions about anything we're talking about, questions about Datapark, go ahead and plug those in there and we'll get to them at the end. If you have technical questions as well, if you're struggling with something, go ahead and put that in the box too, and we can help you out as that comes up. We will be recording this presentation, so be on the lookout for that in the next couple days, and we'll be sending that to you. So let's get going. We'll move on to introductions. Today we are joined by Kevin Jones and Katie Schneider. I'll let them introduce themselves and then get right into the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, JP. So yeah, my name is Kevin Jones. I'm the director of our inside sales and marketing group here at Datapark. I spent the last 20 plus years working with customers in time series data analysis, everything from advanced process control applications to data visualization, more exploratory diagnostic analytics. So certainly excited to be here with you today, and hopefully we can have a nice presentation and spur some questions on your end to see ways we can help you moving forward. Katie?
Hey everyone, I'm Katie Schneider. I'm a sales engineer here at Datapark, and I've spent about the last 7 years helping people use data to improve their processes. So I'm really excited to share with you guys some more examples of that today. And from there, I'll give it to you, Kevin, to start us off.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So as far as our agenda, first we're just going to give you a little background on who Datapark is, where we came from, and then start talking about this idea of alternatives for ProcessBook and kind of how we got to where we are, what we think some of the considerations should be, and how we work with customers to consider alternatives, and then explore a few of those alternatives, and then give a bit of a demo and a deep dive into how Datapark provides one alternative to ProcessBook moving forward. And lastly, we can get a little bit of Q&A. So as far as Datapark goes, as a company, we started in 1997, so kind of that middle square there. So over 25 years as a company of delivering data visualization and data analytics. However, our journey really started over 40 years ago. The founders and visionaries of Datapark began in 1980. So then specifically with the Pi as an example, from the very beginning, we were integrating with the Pi server. So starting in 1999, that's what Datapark was originally envisioned to do, was to integrate with Pi server to provide additional visualization analysis. And over that time, 20 plus years of using optimized drivers for the Pi historian to integrate with that data. Some other things we've done over the years is improving query speed through our performance data engine, which Katie will get into here in a little bit, as well as some conversion tools for ProcessBook displays and data link. And really, our goal is to empower your people with the best tools to make decisions and optimize the plant. So kind of, why are we here? I think many of you have seen the announcements have been made around the end of life. And really for 25 plus years, ProcessBook has been really the ubiquitous application with Pi. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of users, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of displays have been created with this application. And so we want to figure out kind of where we go next and how we help you guys go forward. I'm hearing that the audio is not so good. Katie, are you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you okay.
Okay. So kind of what are our options going forward? And if you go out there on the internet and look at Industry 4.0 applications, kind of the IoT space. It's a huge world out there in the realm of kind of industrial software technology these days. So you see this slide has hundreds of vendor logos, many of them in different boxes. So it can be a pretty challenging market out there, and a really kind of confusing space when it comes to the different vendors. So what we've kind of done is try to boil this idea of industrial data analytics into kind of 4 core areas, and kind of looking at vendors in these 4 core areas. It starts with what we're calling manufacturing applications, which would be really those applications and those tools devoted to the shop floor. So things like dashboards, reports, statistical process control, statistical quality control, ways to really deliver 24/7 decision making at the plant floor. The next category of applications and vendors that we look at would be kind of in more the enterprise visualization space. So how can you take data from multiple locations, multiple sources, and provide either kind of remote monitoring and diagnostic capabilities, or empowering remote subject matter experts to really serve assets that are across the globe. So those are some other kind of enterprise-wide visualization systems. Kind of another category would be the advanced analytics and statistics space. So this is kind of the machine learning, artificial intelligence category of vendors out there. And certainly in the last 5 years, an area that's exploded, and lots of different options in the market for you today. And lastly, that visualization historian space, which is kind of where I would firmly put the PI system and ProcessBook today. Really, kind of how you store data and make those kind of exploratory ad hoc decisions with the tools that you have available. So if we kind of think about these 4 categories of software applications, they really blend together. So kind of the Venn diagram of these 4 applications is really where the rubber meets the road from your perspective. And so really for each company, where that overlap is most important is where you need to kind of explore. And so we like to look at a few considerations to help determine which of these application spaces is most interesting and really going to solve your needs. So the 5 considerations that we look at to help frame which application is going to be best, it starts with the ease of integration. Obviously, customers who have the ProcessBook, have the PI server, oftentimes will have tens of years of data, tens of thousands of data points in that. So the question is, how can you easily integrate with that existing data source? There's also the idea of the content associated with the web ProcessBook. So the displays, potentially the expressions that you've set up. So we want to make sure that we can easily integrate whatever you select with your PI server, and then the content that can be created going forward. So that's certainly the first consideration. The next consideration would be the kind of the diagnostic analytics capabilities. So those are really around how can you kind of effectively solve problems in one sitting. So there's a number of different tools and time series data analysis techniques that we can use to solve problems. So it could be whether it be trend data analysis, whether it be fast Fourier transforms, whether it be histograms or XY charts. You need a kind of a core set of easy to use data analysis features to solve your problems. The third piece, it kind of gets back to that operations management space. Certainly, ProcessBook users over the years have built a lot of dashboards, reports, other kinds of applications within ProcessBook for more operations management use cases. And so we want to make sure that, if you're using those reports, those dashboards, those displays, that you have the ability to carry that going forward. Kind of the fourth consideration would be in the advanced analytics space. So as we mentioned earlier, there's a whole kind of world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced algorithms out there, really around the predictive as well as the prescriptive analytics use cases. And so if those are areas that, as a company you're looking to grow into, that we have the ability to do that. And then lastly, obviously, the cost and the pricing model. So within, as you move forward, different vendors are going to have different pricing models, whether it's a software as a service pricing model, whether it's a perpetual license model. And from what we've seen in our customers and what we really think is important is you've got to think about, how this model works at scale. True success, and what a lot of our customers have seen is you need really every key decision maker in the plant using your data tools effectively, whether that be your operators at the plant floor, whether that be some subject matter experts at the plant, remote subject matter experts. So you got to think about how is this going to scale really at a site-wide or at an enterprise-wide level to help you, kind of get to where you want to go. So we go down to the next section. Yeah, so then, kind of one of our obvious solutions would be going to Pivision. So obviously, familiar ecosystem has native integration to the Pi server. You got your direct connection. There's obviously a migration and a utility for upgrading the ProcessBook displays to Pivision. So it's a natural fit. Lots of, from an operations management standpoint, lots of really good use cases with Pivision. So any customer who's looking to upgrade from ProcessBook, you got to go to Pivision. It's an obvious case. Some of the questions that you'd want to look at with Pivision would be, does it preserve all the functionality you were used to in ProcessBook? ProcessBook was kind of a really nice Swiss Army knife that was able to do a lot of different things, highly configurable, a lot of kind of built-in features and functionality people took advantage of. So does Pivision have all those things that you need going forward? It might include SPC module, kind of the ad hoc diagnostic analytics, potentially scripting or VBA support. And then this is a really natural time for customers or for plants to think about where you're going. So we're talking to different plants and factories out there. This is becoming a natural time to say, well, where do we really want to go with our data analysis and data visualization in the future? And maybe not necessarily do exactly what we're doing before, but how can we improve our data, kind of digital transformation going forward? So kind of it's a good time to look at what are the alternatives out there. And one of those alternatives is Datapark. Like I said, we've been doing this for over 20 years, and in the last couple of years worked with a number of customers who wanted it's a different alternative to ProcessBook and chose Datapark as their visualization platform going forward. And when we talk about Datapark, what we're really talking about is an operations analytics tool set. So we like to say that we're kind of marrying the operations management tools that you need at the plant floor for that 24/7 decision making and putting data in the right context so that operators and subject matter experts can make decisions in real time to optimize the plant. But then also having the kind of the diagnostic and exploratory analytics tools to easily and effectively solve problems. So we want to be able to kind of identify a problem. We want to be able to troubleshoot and solve that problem, Then we also want to be able to kind of roll that back to operations so that either that problem doesn't occur in the future, or if it does, giving the operators information to be able to address it and solve the problem quickly. It's kind of that complete circle of use cases all in one package. And if we kind of look at the kind of how that works in a kind of data stack standpoint, it really starts with that data layer. And one of the things we work really hard to do is to leverage all the data that you currently have in the plant. So whether that be the Pi server, maybe a LIMS lab quality system, or an ERP or MES system, we want to be able to connect to that natively without having to rip and replace or double store the data. And also want to be able to transform it. We mentioned earlier, and Katie will talk about this performance data engine, which will transform it for performance. So we want to ask for 2 years of data. That data is going to come back very quickly, but we also want to transform it for context. So if you make different products in your plant, you want to be able to filter data easily for those different products and other more production contexts. Then the next layer there is that self-service data analysis. Go back one slide, Katie. The self-service data analysis, which is really that exploratory diagnostic analysis tools that we want to be able to get our users using. That the next layer being that third-party data analytics. So as I mentioned, AI and machine learning are kind of some key use cases out there. Well, within Datapark, we're not going to be the end-all, be-all of all different modeling techniques. So there's lots of really kind of creative and innovative solutions out there. So we want to be able to make sure we can provide links both up and down to those systems so that we can again kind of operationalize all of it. So that last layer is the operationalizing of all of the data so that you can easily make your decisions at that plant floor. So whether the data is kind of and the problems were solved within Datapark, whether some of the problems were solved with a third-party modeling tool, you can operationalize all of it in one package. So now let's turn this over to Katie and look at a bit of a demonstration on kind of how the migration would work, and then how Datapark itself can help people solve problems. So Katie, all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So yeah, I'll get into kind of what it would look like to migrate to another tool, and then also what it looks like to use one of those tools. So we'll start off with connecting to data. So one thing that's really nice about Pi's Historian is they make it pretty easy to connect to. So the Pi SDK, or AF SDK is a newer one, we can connect with just a few simple steps. And this is common for a lot of vendors as well. I have an example there of just what it takes for Datapark's configuration aspect. We just need the server and the port number, maybe a user and password if that's required by the system, but that's really all it takes to connect and start seeing data through Datapark. And Kevin alluded to this before, but basically we can connect directly to view the data from the Pi Historian, but we also have the option to aggregate the data, and we do this as a standard. Basically, we are continuously calculating some pre-aggregated data so that if you're looking at really long time periods, say I want to view a year of data, if we have it go through this performance data engine here, we can really speed up your data access. So we can really view that Pi data through the Datapark platform in a really speedy and efficient way. There's also the Pi asset framework to consider. So I know a lot of people have put a lot of time and energy into organizing their tags in Pi in their asset framework. So that's something you want to consider if that's important going forward, and if you want a tool that will let you continue to leverage that. Datapark does have this capability. I have an example there of what the asset framework layout might look like in Pi and then converted to Datapark. So we can browse the asset framework and find the tags in the same way. So you can still utilize that system in Datapark if you want to. So once you've connected to data, the next thing is converting your displays. So one option would be just to recreate them entirely. Obviously, that's time consuming, but that might be your only option for certain certain choices that you make for a new visualization system. Obviously, it'd be better if you could convert your existing displays, and then you'd have to just save them in the new format. In Datapark specifically, we have a few options of display formats we can convert to. That would be our trend and our graphics displays. Graphics would be the more obvious, an analogous display to the ProcessBook displays. It's basically a one-for-one. We get the same type of appearance, and those are the displays that include embedded trends, embedded clip art, process flow diagrams. Whatever you have in ProcessBook, we can convert those so that it looks really similar or equivalent in the Datapark system. And so I'll show an example of kind of what that looks like and the effort required to convert the graphics displays. So basically what I've done here is I've selected a few displays from a folder on the left, just exported from Pi. If I click convert, it goes through and you kind of see it processing each of the displays there. And really quickly, I can have a few of them converted, and then I have new Datapark graphics files to view and verify everything looks good. And that's really all it takes. The other option is trend conversion. So in that same tool, there's an option to, if possible, convert any of my ProcessBook displays that only contain trends to a ParkView trend. And ParkView trend is really an optimized display that gives us a really clean look on just trended data. And that's really what a lot of the ProcessBook displays end up being. So that's just an example of what it looks like in ProcessBook and ParkView. So we can get a really equivalent trend appearance and replicate that functionality for you. So now I'm going to get into more examples of, with Datapark specifically, what you can do with the new tools. So I'm going to show kind of some basics of what we can do that might be familiar, and also some use cases around how you use it to improve your processes. So I'll start off with some basics here. So what you're looking at is the ParkView system. This is our main visualization tool. We have shared displays there, and then also a file tree on the left. So that should look familiar if you're used to browsing displays in ProcessBook. I'm going to start off with an example of a process graphic. So this is a stock summary graphic, pretty dense. Basically, if you hover over any of these data points, you'll see the tag behind it. And we can just double click and we'll get a trend of that one tank level. So it's really easy to kind of explore further any of the data in this graphic. I can also find other tags and just click and drag them right onto the trend there. So I'll move that out of the way a little bit. But yeah, it's as simple as that to kind of use those process graphics alongside trending. Now I'll open up an example of our trend display. So this is that kind of cleaner trend optimized display I mentioned. So in this one, I can change my time period just on that one I'm looking at. If I right click and sync, then all of my trends will be on that same time period. We can also double back in time there with the arrows, so lots of different options. We can sync up all the trends again. Lots of ways to manipulate the time periods. Here I've activated Smart Mouse, which is a way to kind of view what the values are right at a single time. And as you just drag around, it can go on any of the trends. Really easy way to see what your values are at a given time. I'll also show a few different kind of flavors of trend. This is a quality trend. What we have here is more discrete data. You see with the dots. And if I activate my Smart Mouse, I see my control limits that I've set for this tag, as well as some information on what type of product I'm running. And if I double click on that trend, we launch a larger version of it. So that's kind of a way to zoom in on one of them. And you'll also see what we get events reported if you want to, whenever things go out of spec. So that's kind of a nice way to integrate your control charts and event tracking through trend. And the last example there is a batch trend where we have the data overlaid. So these are different time periods on top of each other to kind of compare different batches rather than viewing data just in a continuous fashion like you normally would. So that's just a quick overview of kind of the basics of trending and what process graphics can look like in Datapark. Now we'll get into some diagnostic analytics. So this is how you might use Datapark or another visualization system to troubleshoot and diagnose a problem in your plant. So what we have here is a steam headers process graphic. So the idea here is that we have kind of all of the tags we might want to troubleshoot an area accessible from trend. And the issue I want to troubleshoot here is that number 9 boiler has had some oscillations around it, and we want to trace down why that's happening. So I'm going to start off by trending the steam flow outside of that boiler. And I'm going to change my time period to try to find where those oscillations are most obvious. So I went to 30 days. I'm going to go back to January since I knew that was when we had some particular problems. So again, just going back in time. I'll select the time period that I want to investigate with our zoom tool. Click the Z, and now we are viewing that time period. Now it looks like the oscillations are pretty obvious in this section. I'll zoom into kind of the part that has the most pronounced pattern. So it's definitely oscillating there. But the question we want to answer is it oscillating because of itself or something external to the system? You know, what's the root cause of this? So I'm just going to adjust my time period a little bit more. And then we'll go back to our graphic and look at kind of what could be causing this and explore some other tags. So the first question I want to answer is it maybe the steam generation system causing this? So I'm going to start off at this number 11 boiler, and we'll grab the that same tag coming out of that boiler that we were looking at for number 9. So if I drag that onto the trend, and now we can see the 2 tags alongside each other. If I drag one on top of the other, we basically see that we have pretty much the same pattern. So what we might gather from that is it doesn't really make sense that this number 11 boiler would be causing the exact same pattern on the other one. You know, if it's having the same effect on both, it's probably something external to those. So we'll investigate a little bit further. So now the question would be, is it something kind of in the middle here or something lower down? We did look at all of these turbines here, and all of those were totally flat, so it doesn't seem like that's what's causing the oscillation. But these PRVs are in question and worth considering. So we're going to drag some tags from there, from PRV1 and also PRV3. So PRV1 looks totally flat. We'll go ahead and get rid of that one and just look at this PRV2. So that has some oscillations that are worth considering. And then question is it the PRV oscillating because users down below are, or because of the control system on itself? So we looked at all of these different users down here, and they were all flat besides a few. So we'll go ahead and grab those key tags that we noticed were potentially oscillating as well. And again, I'll just be looking at these tags, kind of comparing them. It's really easy to drag one up on top of the other. And so we'll go ahead and adjust the y-axis there. And we'll grab this green one. We drag that one up. They basically look like the same pattern as well. So we could use the same argument as we did before. You know, if these have the same pattern, it's probably something external to them that's impacting both in the same way. So something we could do, we want to kind of, we've visually seen that the frequency looks the same, but it might be good to do an actual analysis of that. So what we're going to do here is launch an FFT chart, and this plots based on the frequency. So I'm going to say that our time period is probably the cycles within 20 minutes. So if we go ahead and do that, we see we have a peak here. All of them look like the same pattern. Looks like our frequency is peaking right at about 7 minutes there. So it does look like these are all in sync. You can see the peak there. So given that and everything we've investigated with all these tags, we'll say that the oscillation on number 9 would be attributed to the PRV there. So just an example of how you could use a graphic to find all your tags and diagnose an issue in your plant. The next one I'll go into is our advanced analytics. So this is kind of those multivariate modeling, you know, advanced tools that are all the rage lately. So this is an example of how we can do that in Datapark. And in this one specifically, we're going to look at a sensor that's having, you know, maybe some issues or suspect data, and see how we could build a soft sensor to replace that. So I have another process graphic here with a lot of data, but what we're going to launch is our key trend with all of the tags behind that. Now the one on the top left has kind of the key, you know, the primary tags that might be of interest. And we see there that's where we have some, you know, strong oscillations in that green tag. But everything else looks pretty flat. So this reading's kind of suspect. We might see if we can create a soft sensor to replace that and see if that's probably not correct. So I'm going to focus in on that trend, and I'm going to drag in a few other tags that might have an impact. The idea is we want to replace that green tag with a modeled version. So I'm going to go ahead and drag all the tags I might want to consider. Then if I right-click and I launch our Park Model tool, and we'll create a PLS model. That's the version that lets you predict a tag. So our model here, we have a pretty good R-squared, about 0.9, and then we also see the contribution of all of the other tags down below, and all of them have about the same contribution. So we probably want to keep all of those in consideration. I'm going to go ahead and launch the predictions trend. So this has all of my tags as well as the output we were looking for as that calc tag at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and close our model since we have already generated our prediction. I'm going to drag that tag on top of the trend with all the others. And now we can do a little bit more investigation of that. So that kind of teal tag, I'm going to change to a red just to make it easier to see. And I'm going to adjust the time frame as well to make it right on top of the green one that it was supposed to be replacing. So we see it looks like a pretty good match there. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of the other tags just to use some noise there. And now we see basically we could use this tag in place of the green one if we ever have those meter failures, because this will be a pretty good prediction of what that tag should be. So yeah, that's an example of using Park Model or a similar advanced analytics tool to do some real process improvement. The next use case I'm going to go into is operations management. So how we can really use data to get learnings from our operations and also continuous improvement on that as well. So what we're going to show here is our Parkview Centerline display. This is one I haven't shown yet, but it's basically a tabular version of some aggregated data over whatever time periods you want to investigate. So we have our tags on the left there, and then the time periods are in the columns. And in the middle, you'll see some targets that we have as well. So the question we want to answer here is we want to get new targets for our steam and chemical supply because we've had some variation in the quality parameters. If I hover over those columns, I see some more details of what we're running. Basically, these are all times where we were running the product GH3D2018. I'll find one that looks pretty representative or like a good time we were running that and launch a trend of all those tags. So if I look down at one of these quality parameters, we're looking at this data by shift. So shift D looks like they were doing pretty well. B did okay as well, and then D had a pretty good run too. If we also want to explore the runnability perspective as well. So here D looked pretty good, B did okay as well, C shift maybe had some issues, and D brought us back into a good state. So it looks like, at least from a preliminary perspective, D shift has been running pretty well and might be a good one to explore to get our new targets. So what I'm going to do there is open up our advanced run filtering. So this is a way to filter our data further and really zero in on that D shift running this product to find my new targets. So I'm going to open up that criteria section, and if we just click and drag that crew tag, we can set up an additional filter to only show data when crew D was on shift. So we'll queue up our runs there. One of them was kind of short, so I'm going to go ahead and just select the 3 longest ones. And if we load all of those selected ones into trend, we see all the trends have updated with those time periods. So we've got 3 runs where we were making that specific product with this shift. If I open up our quick statistics, we'll see some summarized data, so we can kind of see the averages, standard deviation, for those 3 runs. So another option, besides doing that in trend, we can also do a very similar analysis in Centerline. So I'm going to change my columns to show individual shifts. So now each column represents a time that a shift was active. So I just added some more runs to get a little more representative data. And we also are interested in not just when we had good quality, but when we were running well also. So I'm going to sort actually by this roll speed. So this is sorting by our production rate as well. So now we've got the fastest production rate on the left. Now this first run was pretty short. It was crew A anyway. So crew D, this is the the run that had good quality and also the fastest production rate. So I'm going to use that to set my new targets. Just looking at our the 2 parameters there. So I'm going to go ahead and right from the screen open up our target editor, and I'm going to set up a new target based on the values from that run. So there's the first tag for the steam flow. I'm also going to go into chemical supply and set some new tags there. So there's the product we were looking at. Go ahead and set some new tags, and there we go. So basically, we've used our operations data to set new targets and hopefully improve the process and take the learnings from the shift that's been doing well and edit those key parameters we're looking at in our center line every day. So those are some examples of how you could use Datapark to solve some process problems, and also just an overview of what tools are available. Of course, with any new system you choose after converting from ProcessBook, you would need to do some training on the system. That's both administrator and user level. So can we maintain the system, and also can our users use it in their day-to-day jobs? So of course, we offer some, could do an initial training package upon the conversion. We also have ongoing webinars for our customers on varying levels of technical topics, and also a pretty large knowledge base and tutorials within the product manual itself. So we try to make that really easy, but it's definitely a consideration, of course, when you're switching from a system people are used to a new one. So that concludes my section of the presentation as well. So we'll open it up for questions now. So we'll look at, of course, if you haven't gotten your questions in yet, feel free to keep typing them. We'll monitor as many as we can.
Yeah, I've got a couple in here already. I'll send to you guys, and then I'll keep throwing them at you as they come in. The first one we got here is, in addition to PyServer, we connect to about a dozen other data sources. Are most products like Datapark going to allow you to pull data from multiple sources?
Yeah, thanks for sending that one over, JP. I guess I can't speak for kind of the whole market space from a vendor standpoint, but certainly we believe it's extremely important that whatever visualization analysis tool you use can connect to all of the data sources that you have. I think at 10, 15 years ago, we kind of thought that our time series data historian was going to become the system of record, the end all be all for all data, and you could just single point. That's where everything's going to be. But I think as we're seeing, data's everywhere, and I don't think that's going to go away. That our lab quality systems, our ERP systems, lots of places are going to have data. So that's with Datapark, we've worked really hard to make sure we can connect without having to rip and replace all the data you have. So it's certainly something that I'd encourage anyone looking for visualization analysis to ask that question and see how that fits in their world.
Great. Next one here, you mentioned asset framework. We've been working on an asset framework. How much of this would be transferable if we switched to Datapark?
Okay, I think it's a good question for you to take.
Yeah. So I had a brief slide there just about what it looks like when you're browsing for tags within the asset framework. If you want to keep creating calculations or developing that on the Pi side, of course you can keep doing that, and we would just be viewing it basically. We also do have our own asset framework, so if you didn't get very far on Pi and want to just go all in on the Datapark one, you can start that too. But that's definitely something we've been hearing lately. People put a lot of investment into that, so we've done our best to make sure you can leverage as much of that as possible.
Let's see here. Here's another one. We don't see any need to move away from PyServer as our historian. Is there any reason to believe OSI or Viva would at some point make it so third-party analytics tools wouldn't be able to connect to PyServer? We'd hate to pick up a new platform and suddenly not be able to access our time series data.
Yeah, a good question. If you look at the history, certainly, with the AF SDK today, starting and then back to the SDKs they had in the late 90s, being able to build applications and value add on top of the Pi server has been part of their philosophy, and certainly something I don't see changing. I think as vendors, we all recognize that we can't be the end all be all for different use cases, and so having to create an open platform, making sure that it's accessible to other applications is critical, just because of the different kind of niche industries that you all come from. We have to create open platforms.
Okay. So I got two more here.
Okay.
My site has a lot of Pi data link reports. What happens to those when I switch from ProcessBook?
Katie, I think maybe good one for you.
Yeah, so Pi Data Link, it's a separate tool from ProcessBook. So as long as you have Pi server, you could still use those. We do have some conversion tools available for the Datapark add-in. So if you want to switch from using the Pi Data Link to Datapark's Excel add-in, we have equivalent calculations that we can do as well. So definitely something to consider. I know a lot of people are heavy into those Pi Data Link reports, so you could decide to keep going with them, or we have a way to convert them.
Okay, and one more here. How long would a conversion take? How much work is involved?
Again, I'll throw this one to you, Katie.
Yeah.
See kind of what that looks like.
I'll use the classic answer, it depends, but that's certainly something we would investigate with you. It depends totally on how many of these ProcessBook displays you have. Are you wanting to convert any of your calculations or those data link reports? But as I mentioned, at a basic level, connecting to the data is really easy, and then we have that converter tool for ProcessBook displays is really fast too. So those are kind of the big steps, and then whatever else you want to add on to that, or if it's also can be a good time to improve your displays if those ProcessBook displays have been sitting out there a long time. So it varies, but the basic level just to get you started is pretty quick and efficient.
And to just be more concrete, in a matter of days, certainly have the connections made, have the Datapark platform plugged in, and to start getting value. It goes really fast because we can, essentially leveraging the investments in infrastructure that have already been put in place.
Great, great. I don't see any more questions here. So unless somebody's got something here at the last minute, that will conclude our presentation. Thanks, Katie and Kevin, and thank you all for attending. You can visit us on the web at datapark.com. If you have any questions, reach out to us through our website. Otherwise, we'll be sending out a recording of this in the next day or two, so be on the lookout for that, and thanks again.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.